Hey, how's it going everybody? Rojo here. As the year winds down, I've been checking out videos of what other people played in 2021, and most of the lists I've seen really focus on games that came out this year, which, is par for the course. But I thought it'd be fun to talk about a few of the games that I played. I'm going to be focusing on the stuff that hasn't appeared on the channel because obviously we've been slowly making our way through Wizardry 7, and yeah, I do want to get back to Demon's Souls and Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. I know. It's been a while on those. But anyway, these games in this video, they're not in any particular order, and most of them didn't come out this year. It's just the only requirement to make the list is that I played it at some point in 2021. Without further ado, let's talk about a few games. First up, let's talk about Werewolf the Apocalypse Earthblood for the PS5. This is a game set in the same universe as Vampire the Masquerade, which is what drew my interest in the first place. I don't know much about the lore for the setting, so I thought it'd be fun to check out the werewolf side of things. Honestly, there's a bit of lore if you look for it, but it's mostly a stealth or action game depending on how you want to play it. The game is more or less split up into various arenas with some downtime mixed in to talk to various NPCs if you want to. You can run around and take out enemies silently, or just go big bad wolf mode and slaughter the whole room. Honestly, it makes me think a little bit of the Jekyll and Hyde game we played for Rojotober this year. Overall, I don't know if it'll be worth the $50 asking price for most people, as the production quality is kinda mediocre. But it's perfectly playable, and I really don't feel bad after buying it for $30 on sale earlier this year. I haven't finished it yet, but it's definitely a game that I want to play all the way through.
The Chimeran threat began in Russia. The origin of the virus is unknown.
Resistance Fall of Man is a first-person shooter for the PlayStation 3. I had an Xbox 360 at the time, so I missed out on all the PS3 exclusives of the era. I did pick up a PS3 a couple of years back, and, I've slowly been making my way through trying out a lot of the games that I missed, and Resistance is part of that project. The game seems to be from that phase of art direction where everything was brown and muted, but the gameplay is well enough, despite the fact that I've forgotten all my twin-stick FPS skills. I didn't get very far before getting distracted with something else, but the game seems to take place around like the World War II era, and then there's some kind of alien or virus situation going on and sweeping across Europe and basically wreaking havoc on mankind. Your typical world-ending catastrophe. I definitely do want to come back to this one since it was made by Insomniac, who are the same folks who make the Ratchet & Clank games, among others. The baseline for most of their stuff seems to be pretty decent at a minimum, so even if the graphics aren't really super exciting to me, I'm inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt and see how the game progresses. I'm not going to be surprised if I end up in space or something by the end of things. Moving on to PS4, Rockboshers DX. I guess the DX stands for Director's Cut, is that right? Anyway, Rockboshers is a fun top-down twin-stick shooter with some very, very old-school inspired graphics. I picked up the physical disc version from a sale over limited run games early on in the year. It's got a goofy story about a young Queen Victoria who goes to space to basically fight zombies and stuff. I don't want to put too much of a damper on things, but honestly I was dealing with some pretty unpleasant personal stuff at the time that I played it, and this kind of game is exactly what I wanted. It's pretty short, so unless you're a collector, it's definitely not worth picking up a physical copy for full price, but paying for a few bucks for it on Steam or, somewhere similar is a lot more reasonable. When I got my Switch in 2018, I was gifted Breath of the Wild to go with it. I'm including it in this list just to say that I finally beat it after playing it off and on for 3 years. I did all the shrines and DLC with the exception of the final Master Sword trial. And while I don't think it's a bad game, it's really not what I want from Zelda. The shrine dungeons and exploration were fine, but the big letdown for me were the Divine Beast dungeons. They just didn't really hold my interest for very long. And on top of that, permanently breaking items just sucks. Here's to hoping Breath of the Wild 2 goes back to the longer, old-style themed dungeons.
Welcome to the show!
One game I've been forcing myself to play is Elder Scrolls Blades, specifically the Switch version. Being that it's an online-only game, I decided that I wanted to capture footage of it before it dies sometime in the future. It won't surprise anyone when I say that, as an Elder Scrolls game, it sucks. That said, I've accepted it for what it is, a game that's not meant to be played in long sessions or to be taken super seriously. Personally, I haven't spent a dime on it, and I've actually found myself having at least a little bit of fun. The game lacks polish and is terribly optimized for the Switch, but there's a kernel of a good time in the sort of Punch-Out-esque combat. On top of that, customizing your town is also kind of fun. I feel like I've gotten fairly far playing it off and on, and I'll probably finish the story missions sometime over the course of the next year.
Tajid will enjoy feasting on your bones. Think it's worth dying for?
Speaking of Elder Scrolls, I find myself going back to Legends every once in a while. It's another online-only game, so I've been capturing some footage and saving my gold so I can play through the other 2 story campaigns that are available. Saving the gold has been taking quite a bit of time, but I'm pretty much there, and I'm sure as hell not dropping $40 on a game that's in maintenance mode with no further updates planned. I did spend around, I think, like $100 on this game when I first started playing it, and while that's a bit on the expensive side, I've put about 150 hours into it, so I don't know, I guess I've probably gotten my money's worth. It's a pretty interesting card game with its dual lane system, and there are a ton of different types of decks that you can try out. There are still automated weekly tournaments happening, as well as a monthly ranking system to keep things, somewhat interesting. That said, while I can recommend trying it out, I really can't recommend spending any money on it at this point, since they might flip the switch and kill the game tomorrow for all we know.
You must be cleansed. Mother of mud.
I have you now.
Order, chill, death.
One game that surprised me that's not even really a game as far as I can tell is Glass Masquerade. I think I picked this up as part of a bundle somewhere. Glass Masquerade is basically just a collection of digital puzzles, but it's got such a nice presentation with this stained glass aesthetic, and honestly, this might be some of the best visuals that I've ever seen in any game ever, period. With the music, it's also got this weird air of mystery, like I'm traveling the world and doing some Da Vinci Code stuff or something. I don't know. It really draws me in. Maybe, I don't know, like a quarter of the way through what's included, but if you're into putting puzzles together, I can definitely recommend checking this out. I played through a ton of runs in Roguebook this year. It's a roguelite that's based in the world of Faria, a card game / tactics game that we played a bit of on the channel a few years ago, maybe in like 2017 or something. In Roguebook, you're basically pulled into a storybook and you have to run around a few randomized maps and use resources like ink to reveal new paths. You can choose 2 heroes out of 4 currently in the game for any given run, and on top of that, there's a whole deck building element similar to what you might find in other popular games like Slay the Spire. The presentation is just great, and the playstyle is unique enough to offer something a little bit different within the deck building roguelite genre.
Ah, Watcher. Good, you have arrived.
Ahoy there yourself, Captain. What do I be but a pretty bit of man meat to dangle from a wrist? As easily forgotten as set aside.
The original Pillars of Eternity was pretty fun, and I played through it again a couple-ish years ago so that I could import my character into Pillars of Eternity 2. I had a playthrough going for Pillars 2 like a year ago or so, but I never finished it, so I started over. I like some of the gameplay changes into, especially the multi-classing system and how your resources mostly reset after every battle. And of course it's cool seeing old party members again, but I don't much care for the party size limit being reduced from 6 to 5. That's maybe like nitpicking a little bit, because the game is balanced around having 5 characters, but yeah, it's just, I want more guys, you know? Chasing a god across the high seas is an interesting main quest, and collecting all the crew members for your ships is fun. But I have to say that I don't really like it quite as much as rebuilding a castle like you did in the first game. Still, I think I'm about halfway through Pillars 2 at this point, if you include the DLC, and I am looking forward to seeing how things play out for my Watcher in the end. I'm trying to get mostly positive outcomes without explicitly allying with any of the major factions, so we'll see how that works out.
I need something stronger. You're mine. What a consider, right? Look out!
The original NES release of Final Fantasy is my favorite version of the game, mostly due to nostalgia, I think. That said, the Pixel Remaster release that came out this year was a fun way to experience Final Fantasy again. The presentation is overall pretty good, with some really nice music in some parts of the game. Mechanically, it seems like it's a bit of a mix between the original NES game and the GBA remake, meaning that Pixel Remaster keeps the old spell system, but it adds new items like ethers and stuff like that. Overall, this version of the game is very easy, in my opinion, with the exception of the Chaos fight, which is kind of an RNG trash fire. Pixel Remaster doesn't have the extra dungeons from the GBA or PSP remakes, but honestly, that might be for the best. If you want to experience the original Final Fantasy, your best bet is probably actually maybe the randomizer with improved vanilla settings, or the PS1 version. That said, the Pixel Remaster is still a lot of fun. Apparently there's already a randomizer for this version of the game, so we may check that out sometime. Aside from that, I actually did a couple speedruns of the Pixel Remaster on the channel, so if you want to see more, you can feel free to check those out.
Somebody's been bad. I approve. Mind if I come in? Time is ticking, so I'll cut straight to the chase. I work in talent acquisition, specializing in a highly unconventional sector for a very particular client. And they're particularly interested in your kind of talent. Fucking stuff up, putting it back together, altering the fabric of space and time, basic thaumaturgy.
I finally decided to try out an MMO I saw in Ross's Game Dungeon a few years ago. The secret world is interesting in that it's set in modern times, except that monsters are very real. You can join one of 3 factions to deal with all the nonsense cropping up around the world, and your adventures begin in Maine in the USA. I should clarify that I'm talking about the old version of the game, which thankfully is still online at the time of this video being recorded. They relaunched the game as Secret World Legends sometime around 2017 or 2018. According to my cursory research, the content between the games is mostly the same, I think, but the mechanics seem to be pretty different. The old version's skill system is pretty darn cool. There are no set classes. Instead, you just pick 2 different weapons with different skills available to them and go to town. You can switch the weapons you want to use at any time, though you may not have any skills to use with them yet. But from what I understand, you can actually unlock everything eventually, so character growth is more lateral than strictly getting more powerful, which is something that I like. You also can't slot every single skill that you learn, which forces you to make some interesting choices for your build. Secret World also has some fully voiced cutscenes, which seems like a pretty high production value for 2012 when it originally came out. Like, even World of Warcraft doesn't have fully voiced cutscenes for the most part. The other cool thing about the game is just the setting. As far as I know, there just isn't anything else like it on the market. If you're into Halloween-style games, this is definitely up your alley. Unfortunately, the only way to play the old version of the game is pretty much just to go and find a brand new physical copy with the key inside. So far, you can still register that key, and off you go. You also might have some trouble finding other players in the old version of the game, because it's pretty much dead, though I think there is a Discord that exists for some folks who are still playing the old version. Otherwise, if you just want to see some of the content, it might be worth your time to just check out Secret World Legends and just see what it's all about. I wish I knew that this game existed back when it originally came out.
You gotta get to the north barricades before they do. See if you can't head him off at the northern barricade. south barricade.
Anyway, those are some of the games I played in 2021. There is a DOS game that's not on the list that I played through, but we are probably going to have a separate video about that one, so I'll save it for another time. On top of that, I did spend some time putting together some old retro computers, since nobody wants to sell a graphics card at a fair price these days. So yeah, I put together some computers all the way from like the DOS era up through like Windows XP. I may make some videos next year about those builds. We'll see if we have time for that. Now, I don't typically ask for people to comment on my videos, but if you played something cool this year, feel free to let me know what it was. I also don't often reply to comments, but I do still have time to read them all so far. Regardless, I hope you all have a great holiday, and I'll see you in the new year.